I paid $200 a month into our family Christmas fund for 9 years. That's $21,600 out of my own checking account. And I never once asked to see a statement. Because asking would have been an insult. Then in February, a bank statement showed up at my house by mistake, and I found out the fund took in $96,000 last year, and that the account it's sitting in isn't a family fund at all. That's not the worst part. The worst part is whose signature is on the second line of that account, and I didn't find that out for another 6 weeks. I'm 45. I'm a heating and air technician in Erie, Pennsylvania. Residential and light commercial, 23 years in the trade, same company since 2009. My wife is Sharon. She's 44, she's a medical assistant at an orthopedic office, and we've been married 18 years. 2 kids, Maddie who's 16 and Ben who's 12. The family in this story is Sharon's family. There are 4 households, Sharon and me, her brother Denny and his wife Robin, her sister Colleen and her husband Marcus, and Sharon's youngest brother Wade and his wife Petra. Robin is 47. She's my sister-in-law by marriage, Denny's wife, and she is, or was, the center of gravity of that entire family. She runs a home staging business out of Erie, been doing it since 2014. She's the one who remembers birthdays, who organizes the meal train when somebody has surgery, who sends the card. If you met her at a graduation party, you would think she was the best thing about that family. And honestly, for a lot of years, she was. Sharon's mother, Eileen, died in October of 2015. Pancreatic cancer, 11 weeks from the diagnosis. And that family fell apart in a way I've never seen a family fall apart. Because Eileen had been the one holding every thread, the holidays, the phone calls, all of it. That first Christmas, in 2015, nobody did anything. Everybody just sat in their own houses. Sharon cried for 2 days, and in January of 2016, Robin called a meeting. She had it at her house, all 8 adults. She'd made a binder, an actual 3-ring binder, with tabs. And she stood in her dining room and said that this family was going to fall apart if somebody didn't build something, and that she was volunteering to be that somebody, and that here was her idea. Everybody puts in $200 a month. 4 households, $800 a month, $9,600 a year. And every December she'd rent a big place somewhere and put the whole family under one roof for 3 nights. And everybody's kids would grow up knowing each other. And Eileen's family would stay a family. I want you to understand that I cried at that meeting. I'm not a crier. I cried in my brother-in-law's dining room because I thought it was the kindest thing anybody had ever offered to do, for people who weren't even her own blood. We all said yes in about 4 minutes. Nobody asked a single question about how the money would be held. That's on me. That's on all 8 of us. But it's especially on me because I'm the one who reconciles a work truck's parts account every month and knows better. The first trip was December 2016. A lodge outside the Poconos, 6 bedrooms. It was the best 3 days that family had since Eileen died. Robin had name tags on the bedroom doors. She'd made a slideshow of Eileen. She'd bought everybody matching mugs. And every year after that it was the same place, the same weekend, the same routine. 9 trips, 96 people, nights of my family being happy in a lodge in the mountains. And I want to be honest that I would not trade those 9 Christmases for the $21,600. And that fact is exactly what made the whole thing work. Now here's the first small thing, and it took me 9 years to understand what I was looking at. Every single year, at some point during the trip, somebody would say something like, "Wow, this must be expensive." Or, "Robin, are we covering this okay?" And Robin had an answer. Not a defensive answer, a warm one. She'd wave her hand and say, "Don't you worry about the money. That's my job. You just be here." That's it. That's the whole trick. 9 years of it. She never once said a number, and she never once refused to answer, because refusing would have made it a thing. She just made you feel small for asking about money at a family Christmas. The second thing was in 2019. Robin sent a text to the family group about the account. She said the bank was updating something and needed a physical mailing address on file, and she said, "Teddy, can I use yours? I'm at the office half the time and mail gets lost here." I said, "Sure." Of course I said sure. That's a nothing request. I never got any mail from that bank. Not one piece for 6 years, so I forgot about it completely, and I mean completely. It was gone out of my head until February of this year. Remember that. That's how this whole thing came apart. A text message in 2019 that I said sure to. The third thing, and this is the one that should have stopped me. In the spring of 2020, Robin's business had a bad stretch, obviously. Nobody was staging houses in April of 2020. And I remember Denny saying at a cookout that summer that they'd had a rough few months. And I remember Sharon being weirdly quiet about it. And I remember thinking that's normal. Everybody had a rough few months. Except Robin's business never really came back. And I only know that now because I looked. Her website hasn't been updated since 2021. Her business page has 3 reviews and the most recent one is from 2022. She has been telling that family she's booked solid for 4 years. Now the pattern. Because there is one, and I couldn't see it until I laid it out. Every year the contribution stayed at $200. Never went up, never went down. And that consistency is a huge part of why nobody thought about it. It became a utility bill. It became something that left my account on the 5th of the month like the internet. But the trip got smaller, slowly. In 2016, there was a caterer for one night. By 2019, we were all bringing dishes. In 2018, there was a hired photographer. By 2020, there wasn't. In 2021, Robin said the lodge was raising rates and asked if people minded doubling up in the bunk room, and everybody said of course not, and Colleen's family has slept in a bunk room ever since. Every single one of those changes had a reason attached to it, and every reason was reasonable, and every year I paid $2,400. Here's the closest I ever came to asking, and I still think about it, December 2022. Third night, in the lodge kitchen, about 11 at night. Marcus, Colleen's husband, he does commercial flooring. Good guy, is doing dishes next to me and he says quietly, "Hey, do you ever wonder what this place actually runs?" And I said, "Honestly, yeah." And Marcus said, "I looked it up one time, on the rental site." And I said, "And what?" And he said, "I don't want to be that guy." And I said, "Yeah, me neither." And we finished the dishes. Two grown men, $2,400 a year each, and we could not bring ourselves to be that guy. The last straw wasn't a fight. It was an envelope the 11th of February. I got home from a service call around 4:30, brought in the mail, and there was a bank envelope in it. Not a bank I use. Addressed to a business name I didn't recognize, care of my address. I almost put it in the recycling. I actually had it in my hand over the bin, because I've gotten mail for the people who lived here before us for 11 years. Then I saw the second line of the address. Care of Theodore Kasperzak, which is me, and the account holder line said a business name, and underneath it in smaller type it said DBA Fresh Start Home Staging. Robin's business, and underneath, on the address block, one more line. Kasperzak Family Holiday Account. That's when my stomach did the thing. Here's what a person is supposed to do at that moment, and I did not do it. A person is supposed to not open somebody else's mail. I opened it standing in my kitchen with my coat still on statement period. The previous calendar year. One page, front and back, total deposits, $96,040. I want to explain why that number stopped my heart, because it's not the number I expected to be shocked by. $800 a month from 4 families is $9,600 a year. That's what should have been in there. $96,000 is 10 times that. And for about 90 seconds, I actually thought I'd found something good. I thought, oh, she's been growing it somehow. There's some kind of investment. The family's sitting on real money. Then I read the line items. The deposits weren't $800 a month. They were all over the place. $1,100 here, $4,200 there, $600, $3,100. Dozens of them, some of them labeled with what looked like client names, some of them just deposits. That account isn't a family Christmas fund with some extra money in it. It's a business operating account, and our $800 a month has been flowing into it for 9 years alongside everything else, and there is no line in that statement anywhere that says anything about a lodge. Withdrawals match deposits almost exactly. The ending balance was $2,011 and change 9 years, $800 a month, and the account it goes into ends the year with $2,000 in it. I sat down at my kitchen table with my coat on and I did not move for a long time. Then I did the thing I should have done in 2016. And it took 11 minutes. I went on the rental site. The lodge is still listed. Same place, same photos. I recognized the kitchen island immediately. 3 nights, the 3rd week of December, whole property. $1,940. Plus the cleaning fee and taxes, it comes to about $2,300. I've been paying $2,400 a year. By myself. For a house that costs $2,300 for the whole family for the whole weekend. 4 families paying $9,600 a year for 9 years, for a rental that costs $2,300, even if you add in groceries and the tree and the gifts for the kids, and I'm being generous. I'm saying $6,000 a year all in, that's $90,000 in 9 years that went somewhere else. I want to tell you what I felt, and the honest answer is that the first thing wasn't anger. It was embarrassment so intense I felt hot. Because I thought about Marcus at that sink in 2022, and I thought about the 9 years of me being proud of myself for not being the guy who asks. That night I did not tell Sharon. I've thought about why. A lot. And I've decided it was 2 things. 1, I didn't want to be wrong in front of my wife about her own brother's wife. And 2, and this is the part I couldn't have articulated in February, some animal part of my brain had already noticed she went quiet in 2020. And I didn't want to know why. I gave myself until Christmas, I know. 10 months. Everybody's going to say I should have gone straight at her. Here's my reasoning, and you can tell me if it was wrong. If I confronted Robin in February, in private, on the phone, with one statement that I wasn't supposed to have, she gets 10 months to build the story. She's had 9 years of practice building stories. And I'd be the guy who opened somebody else's mail and then accused a grieving family's glue of stealing Christmas. So I built a file instead, and I did it the way I'd do a diagnostic on a system that's failing intermittently. You don't guess, you log everything first. I pulled 9 years of my own bank records. Every transfer dated 108 of them $200 each, $21,600. My credit union charged me $11 for the older statements. Second, I screenshotted the lodge listing with the pricing calendar for December, every year they had history for. The site keeps rate history for about 4 years. That gave me 2021 through 2024, all between $1,800 and $2,000 a night. Sorry, that's per stay, 3 nights, ranging from $1,780 to $2,040. Third, and this is the one that took nerve. In April, I called the lodge directly. I said I was looking at booking the 3rd week of December and wanted to confirm availability. And the woman said, "Oh, that week's held. Same families had it since 2016. I said, "That's great. They must love it." And she said, "They're lovely. She always pays the deposit right on time." I said, "Out of curiosity, has the rate gone up much?" And she said, "Not much. We keep it steady for repeat guests. Not much." And Robin had told us it was raising rates in 2021. Fourth, in June, I did something I'm not proud of and would do again. Pennsylvania has a business entity search on the state website. Free. I pulled up Fresh Start home staging. And there was a second thing attached to it. A fictitious name registration, filed in 2016, 3 weeks after that meeting in Robin's dining room. The registered name is Kaspjak Family Holiday Account. She registered a fictitious business name so she could open a bank account that would print Kaspjak Family Holiday Account on the statements, attached to her own business. In the same month, we all agreed to start paying. That's not a woman who drifted into a bad situation. That's a woman who did paperwork. And here's the part I couldn't get past all summer, the thing that kept me up. The state filing lists the applicants. There were 2 names on it. The second one was blurry in the scan and I couldn't read it. And the certified copy costs $40 and takes 3 weeks. And I ordered it in July, and then, when the envelope came, I put it in my truck's console and did not open it for 11 days. I'm going to come back to that. The trip was the 19th through the 22nd of December. 18 people, 4 families. Same lodge, 9th year. I brought a folder, 2nd night. That's the night everybody's relaxed, the kids are watching something in the loft, and all 8 adults end up in that big kitchen with the island. That's the night Marcus and I did dishes in 2022. Robin was making her hot chocolate thing. Sharon was on a stool. Colleen and Petra were at the island. Denny and Wade and Marcus were at the table, and I said, "Hey, before everybody scatters, I want to say something about the fund." And Robin said, without turning around, "Oh, Teddy, not at Christmas." And I said, "Yeah, at Christmas." I put the folder on the island and I opened it, first page. My own bank records. 108 transfers, highlighted. I said, "That's mine, $21,600 since 2016. Everybody in this room has one of those." Second page. The lodge listing with the December pricing. I said, "That's this house. It's $2,300 for the 3 nights. That's the whole house for all 18 of us." Nobody said anything. Colleen had her hand over her mouth already, and I hadn't even gotten to it yet. Third page, the bank statement. I said, "That's the account. It came to my house in February because of a mailing address change in 2019 that nobody ever fixed. Robin, this fund took in $96,000 last year. Tell everybody what this place costs." And Robin turned around from the stove, and I want to tell you exactly what her face did, because I'll think about it for the rest of my life. It didn't do anything. It went completely smooth. Like a screen resetting, and she said, "That's a business account. Those are business deposits. You're looking at my company's operating account and you don't understand what you're reading." I said, "Then why is our $800 a month in it?" And she said, "Because it's easier for bookkeeping." Bookkeeping. Denny stood up. And my brother-in-law, 49 years old, said, "Robin, where's the Christmas money?" And she said, and this is the quote I'll be hearing when I'm 80. She said, "It's in the house. It's in the house you're all standing in. It's in 9 years of your kids knowing each other. What do you think I've been doing?" Then she said, "You want a receipt for a family?" Marcus said quietly, "Yeah, kind of." And Robin picked up her mug and she said, "I'm not doing this in front of the children." And she walked out of that kitchen and went upstairs. The kids weren't in that room. The kids were 2 floors up watching a movie. I looked around at 7 adults standing in a kitchen and I realized nobody was going to follow her. Everybody was going to let it be tomorrow's problem, except Sharon. My wife had not said one word the entire time. And she was still sitting on that stool. And she was looking at the 3rd page, the bank statement. And she had gone the color of paper. And I thought it was shock. I want that on the record. For 6 more weeks I thought that was shock. Everybody drove home the next morning. 9 years of that trip, and the 9th one ended at 9:15 in the morning with people loading cars and not making eye contact. Here's what the next 11 days looked like. And it's the part that made me angriest. Because it wasn't Robin who did it. Denny called me on the 23rd. He said, "I need you to understand something. She has done everything for this family since Mom died. Everything. And you ambushed her in a kitchen." I said, "Denny, $96,000. And Denny said, "That's her business account. I've seen it. There's money going in and out constantly. That's what a business is." I said, "Then where's ours?" And there was a long pause and my brother-in-law said, "I'm not going to do this on Christmas Eve." Petra, Wade's wife, and I've always liked Petra, sent a text on the 24th to the group. 14 adults are in that group chat counting the older cousins. She wrote, I think we all need to take a breath. Robin has never taken a dime from any of us. She's given up 9 Decembers of her life to plan those trips. Let's remember that. That got 7 of those little thumbs up. 7. Colleen called me on the 26th and cried on the phone for 20 minutes and said, but we had such good times, and when I said, Colleen, do you understand that you've paid $21,600 too? She said, I know. But what's the alternative? We just don't do Christmas? That's the trap. That's the thing I underestimated for 10 months. Robin didn't just take money. She made herself the load-bearing wall. You can't remove her without the roof coming down. And everybody would rather live in a house they're overpaying for than be the one who knocks out the wall. Wade was the only one who went the other way, and he did it by text on the 28th. I ran the numbers you gave us. If she's got an explanation, I'd love to hear it. She hasn't given one. And Robin was quiet for 6 days, and then she posted on Facebook on the 30th. Not about me, about her. A long post about how she'd spent 9 years being the person who holds a family together after losing a mother-in-law she loved, and how sometimes the people you carry are the ones who drop you, and how she was going to focus on herself in the new year. 91 comments. Women from her church, women from her old gym, telling her she was an angel and that some people don't deserve her. Not one number in the whole post. Not one, and the whole 11 days Sharon barely spoke. She'd been quiet since the kitchen. I asked her twice if she was okay and she said she was just processing it. And on New Year's Eve at about 11 at night, I finally said, look, I know he's your brother, and I know Robin's been like a sister to you, and I'm sorry I did it that way. And my wife of 18 years said, that's not why. And she didn't say anything else, and I let it go, because I've been letting things go with that family since 2016. Then on the 4th of January, I remembered the envelope in my truck, the certified copy of the fictitious name registration. $40. It had been sitting in my center console since the last week of July because when it came I had a bad feeling and I put it somewhere I wouldn't look at it. I opened it in the cab of my truck in a Wendy's parking lot on my lunch, expecting to see Denny's name applicant 1, Robin M. Kasperzak applicant 2, Sharon L. Kasperzak. My wife's name is on the registration that created the account. Filed the 22nd of February 2016. I sat in that parking lot for the rest of my lunch break, and then I went and did a heat exchanger inspection at a church, and I have no memory of doing it. I went home at 5. Kids were at Sharon's dad's. I put the certified copy on the kitchen table and I said, I need you to tell me about February of 2016. And my wife sat down and put both hands flat on the table and said, I've been waiting for you to ask me that for 11 months. 11 months. She'd known I knew since February. Not from me, from Robin. Robin had called her the week the statement came to our house, because Robin got a returned mail notification and asked Sharon whether Teddy had said anything about the bank. So my wife spent the entire year watching me build a file against her sister-in-law, knowing her own name was on it somewhere and saying nothing. Here's what she told me, and I've had 4 months to decide whether I believe it, and I do. In February of 2016, 3 weeks after the meeting in the dining room, Robin came to our house on a Tuesday morning while I was at work. Sharon was on maternity. No, that's wrong, Ben was 3, she was working part-time and off that day. Robin came over and she was a mess. Crying, shaking, she told Sharon that the staging business was 6 weeks from folding, that she and Denny had taken a second mortgage in 2014 to fund it, that if it went under they'd lose the house, and Denny didn't know how bad it was, and if she told him it would end her marriage. And she said she had a plan. She said she'd figured out that if the family fund ran through the business account, the deposits would look like revenue, and revenue would keep her line of credit open at the bank for 1 more year, and 1 more year was all she needed, and she needed a second name on the fictitious name filing. She said it was a formality. She said Denny couldn't be on it because he'd see it. And then she said the sentence that got my wife's signature. And Sharon repeated it to me at that table exactly. Sharon, your mother would want us to keep this family from losing another thing. Eileen had been dead 4 months. Sharon signed it. In our kitchen. On a Tuesday morning in February of 2016, at 35 years old, 4 months after burying her mother, because her sister-in-law told her it was a formality that would save Denny's house, she never looked at the account. Not once in 9 years. She said she didn't have a login and she never asked for one. And I believe her, because I know my wife and she is not a person who looks at things she's afraid of. I said, Sharon. 9 years, and she said, every single year I told myself it was a bookkeeping thing that got left in place. And I said, what about after February? When the statement came here and you knew what was in it, and my wife said, because the second I said something to you, I'd have to know what I signed. That's the whole thing. That's the entire 9 years in one sentence. She wasn't protecting Robin. She was protecting herself from a piece of information she'd been carrying since 2016 and had never once let herself look at directly. And here's the part that made me able to stay in the room. I asked her, did you ever get anything out of this? Did Robin ever give you money, a discount, anything? And Sharon said no, and then she said she sent me a card every year on Mom's birthday. Every year for 9 years. Nobody else did. Robin bought my wife's silence with a $2 card, and it worked because Robin was the only person on earth who remembered Eileen's birthday out loud. Here's how it landed. It's been about 4 months. The first thing I did was talk to a lawyer, because I needed to know whether my wife was in legal trouble. That was $300 for 45 minutes with a woman named Andrea Petrocelli in Erie, and it was the best $300 I've spent. She said Sharon's exposure was low. Being a co-applicant on a fictitious name registration isn't a crime, and there's no evidence Sharon received any money. She said what we had was almost certainly a civil matter, that 8 people voluntarily paid money for a stated purpose, and the money went somewhere else, and that's conversion, and it's actionable. Then she said the thing that changed how I did all of it. She said, "Do you want money, or do you want it stopped and everybody to know? Because those are 2 different strategies and you have to pick." I picked the second one, so on the 11th of January I sent one email. Not a group chat. An email to all 7 other adults with 4 attachments, my 9 years of bank transfers, the lodge's actual rate history, the bank statement page, and the certified copy of the fictitious name registration with both applicant names on it, including my own wife's. I put my wife's name in that email. She read the draft first and she said send it, 6 sentences in the body. The dates, the amounts, the price of the lodge, and 1 line at the end. Sharon signed this in 2016 and she's told me why, and she'll tell any of you who asks. I'm not protecting anybody. I'd just like an accounting. The group chat did not explode. That's the strange part. It went completely silent for about 9 hours. Then Marcus called me and said, I looked it up in 2022. I want you to know I looked it up in 2022 and I said nothing and I've been sick about it since December. Then Colleen called Denny, and Denny drove to Robin's business storage unit on a Sunday and found 4 years of files. And what he found is that the business has been effectively dead since 2021. 3 jobs in 2024. 3. She has been leaving the house every morning in work clothes for 4 years. He found the second mortgage. He found that it had been refinanced twice. And he found the line of credit that our $800 a month had been feeding since 2016, currently drawn down to $58,000. Denny called me on a Tuesday night in late January, and he cried on the phone, which I have never heard that man do, and he said, I've been telling people my wife is booked solid. He didn't know. I have gone back and forth on that 100 times and I've landed on believing him, mostly because of what he did next. Robin's position never changed. Not once through all of it. She has said to Denny, to Colleen, and in one voicemail to me. The money went into keeping a family together. There was never a promise about how it would be held, and nobody ever asked. That last part is true. Nobody ever asked. That's the part I have to live with. There's no lawsuit. All 7 of us talked about it in February and the answer was no. Denny is on the hook for that second mortgage too, and suing Robin means suing Denny. And Colleen said the thing that ended the conversation. Are we going to take Eileen's son's house? So instead, this is what happened. Denny and Robin are separated. He moved into his brother Wade's basement in March. He's told me twice that it's about the 4 years of lying about the business, not about the fund. And I think that's a distinction that matters to him and I've stopped arguing with it. The account was closed on the 3rd of February. Denny closed it, since he's on it as her spouse for the business. There was $1,811 in it, and he split it 7 ways among the other adults and sent $42 each with a note that said, I know. Robin has not spoken to me since December. She has told her church that her husband's family accused her of stealing Christmas from them, which is technically an accurate sentence and a complete lie, and that is exactly her gift. Petra apologized to me in March. Colleen and I are fine. Marcus and I are better than fine, honestly. We go to breakfast now, which we never did in 9 years of Christmases, and I think it's because we're the 2 men who both knew and both said nothing, and we don't have to explain that to each other. And Sharon and me. We're in counseling on Thursdays. $90 a session. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's fine. She hid something for 9 years that cost me $21,600 and cost her brother his marriage. Our counselor asked me in March if I'd forgiven her and I said no, and she asked if I intended to. And I said I intend to find out. What I'll say for my wife is this. When I put her name in that email to 7 people, she read it and said send it. She has answered every single question anybody has asked her, including her own brother, in person, without crying about it. That's more than the woman who planned it has done. Christmas this year is at my house. That was Colleen's idea. Everybody brings something. I priced out a ham. And here's the thing I keep coming back to at 2 in the morning. The trips were real. That's what nobody wants to say out loud. 9 Decembers, 18 people, kids who are cousins instead of strangers because of a woman who filed paperwork to keep her business alive. If she'd never done any of it, that family would have scattered in 2016 and I know it. She stole $90,000, and she also gave my kids 9 Christmases with their cousins, and both of those are true. And I have not figured out what to do with that. So here's what I want to ask. Because Colleen still thinks I should have handled it privately. And my own daughter told me in January that I ruined Christmas. Was I wrong to open that folder in the kitchen on the second night of the trip instead of calling Robin in February when the statement came? And the one I actually can't answer. My wife signed one form in 2016 and then spent 9 years not looking at what she signed. Is that really any better than what Robin did?